Hey up, it's Steve from that old Yorkshire Geek, and it's list time again. Yay! This time, it's not a Star Trek list this time, for once. This time, and it's not from Screen Rant either. I'm going somewhere new. This time, we're going to look at the best movie trilogies ranked. This is from Den of Geek this time. So let's have a look and see if we agree with their list of trilogies. I suspect we won't. So anyway, so off we go. I will add this to the screen and we will see, won't we? But before we start, don't forget, like and subscribe, share the videos, drop a comment, hit the notification bell if you're subscribed already. This will be not exclusive, a timed exclusive on my Patreon channel for a couple of weeks, and then it'll pop up, then it'll go public and it'll pop up on YouTube as well after a couple of weeks. But if you want to watch it now, you'll have to go on to Patreon. But if you're not a member of my Patreon, you won't be seeing this anyway until it appears on YouTube, and you'll be thinking, what's he talking about? I don't know. What else? So go and subscribe to my Patreon. You can join up for free. Some of my things are available, for free for members. Some are public and some are for paid members. I mean, I've got to make some money somehow. Speaking of money, there's a super thanks button down there somewhere, I hope, on YouTube. So give that a press as well. Right, if you want to throw some money my way, it just helps pay the bills. Right, so off we go. Right, where were we? I'm adding this. Right, there it is. There we go. Den of Geek. I forgot to go full screen. Never mind. Right, here we go. Best movie trilogies ranked, says Joe George. To this day, moviegoers and filmmakers love a three-act structure, even with their sequels. It's led to legendary sagas like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, The Godfather, and The Dark Knight. But which is best? We'll find out. But this is Joe George's list, not mine. We will see. And there we can see, there's Batman with Christian Bale. I'm not a fan of the Dark Knight trilogy. I've got to admit, I'm not. I don't hate it, I'm just not a huge fan of it. I prefer the Tim Burton ones, to be completely honest. And there's Luke and Yoda. And there's Marty McFly and Spider-Man. This is the Sam Raimi ones. And there's Gandalf. Precious. Right, the best things come in threes, especially stories. Can you see that? Is that big enough? Oh, there we go. We'll make it a bit bigger. Oh, there we go. The best things come in threes, especially stories. In Western nations, we like a three-act structure in which we set a status quo, watch our heroes fall, and then see them return to greatness. Some of these stories cannot be held within a single movie. For those epics, those monumental narratives, the movie trilogy was born. Trilogies represent some of the best that cinema has to offer. Movies that change the culture and the art form. The trilogy might vary in quality from film to film, but together, these three films tell a story that cannot be ignored. Before we get too far, let's lay out our criteria, or the author's criteria. The trilogies chosen here are those intended to be a trilogy either from the outset or by the end of the third film. Thus, we're including things such as Toy Story and Indiana Jones trilogies, even though those continued on with further entries. But were they meant to be a trilogy from the outset? I don't think so, to be completely honest. They ended up becoming trilogies, but, was the plan for them to be a trilogy? I'm not sure. That said, we disallow trilogies that occur in the middle of franchises, such as the Tommy Jarvis story in Friday the 13th, Part 4 through Part 6, or the arc in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, through Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, which is unfair. But anyway, that said, here are our picks, because if they're not including in the middle, why are they including ones at the beginning? They've said some carry on afterwards. Why not include middle bits? So, sorry, Joe, I'm not agreeing with you already. I haven't even got to the bloody list. But anyway, that said, here are our picks for the three movie tales that continue to define cinematic storytelling. Right, off we go. Number 15. God, how many is there? The Naked Gun trilogy. Couldn't you just make it a top 10 and not really include the Naked Gun trilogy? As good as it is, But anyway, the Naked Gun trilogy follows a trajectory. I can't speak today, what's up with me? That reoccurs throughout this list. 1988's The Naked Gun from the files of Police Squad operates. Police Squad is an amazing TV series. I think you can get it on DVD. It is hilarious. Operates like a proof of concept with Jerry Zucker, Jim Abrahams, and I thought it was Jim Abrams. Could be wrong, I can't remember. And David Zucker, along with co-writer Pat Proft, trying to repeat the success of 1980's Airplane by bringing back their 1982 flop TV series Police Squad, which were it wasn't successful, but it was amazing. The 1991 sequel, The Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear, perfects the model, creating a film that rivals Airplane for pure funny jokes per second. And then 1994's The Naked Gun 33 1/3, The Final Insult, renders the idea tired and offensive. I can't really remember, to be honest. I know that the third one had Anna Nicole Smith in it, didn't it? Why I remember that, I don't know. When looking at the three movies combined, that third entry does stand out, not least of all for an extended transphobia gag that somehow outdoes Ace Ventura: Pet Detective from the same year. I honestly can't remember what happens in Naked Gun 33 1/3. However, the first two films more than make up for the unfunny third. No one has ever done straight-laced humour, or straight-faced humour even, better than Leslie Nielsen, the only man who could deliver a line like, "I'm sure that we can handle this situation maturely, just like the responsible adults that we are. Isn't that right, Mr. Poopy Pants?" The sheer number of hilarious jokes across the three films outpaces those of any other comedy series, more than making up for the weak final film. But, yeah, it's a trilogy now, but was it intended? Because he said at the top, intended to be a trilogy either from the outset or by the end of the third film. But that doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? But anyway, whatever. So, moving on, the Matrix trilogy. Yes, I like the Matrix trilogy. I do. I like the second and third film. A lot of people don't like, the sequels, do they? Yes, the Matrix is, a league of its own, but I still enjoyed Reloaded and the other one. Whatever the third one is, I'm sure we'll find out. Right, then there's The Matrix, a trilogy with one amazing movie and two miscalculations. A lot of trilogies fit that description, including the original runs of the Beverly Hills Cop and Rambo franchises. However, The Matrix secures its spot just because that first film revolutionised the genre. Directors, except they weren't at the time, but Lily and Lana Wachowski, except they weren't at the time, they were called something, they were men at the time, weren't they? Took all their favourite things, from anime to video games to continental philosophy, into a movie that felt completely new. For better or worse, The Matrix changed the face of cinema. By the time everyone caught up with The Matrix on VHS and the nascent DVD format, which The Matrix kind of, solidified that format and gave us, one of the early great DVD menus. I think it was like The Matrix and Blade were the two films that you had to have on DVD, weren't they, back then? Anyway, DVD format. Audiences clamoured for more about the conflict between the machines and the human resistance. And then in 2003, The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions happened. Over the years, fans have put together thoughtful and well-observed arguments in defence of the two Matrix sequels. As smart as these takes may be, they can't get around the fact that Reloaded and Revolutions are deadly dull. No, they're not. How can you say that? They're not deadly dull. They're not as good as The Matrix, but they're still quite action-packed and exciting. But there is... I don't like what they call it. I can't remember the bloody name of the place now. Zion, that's it. I don't like Zion. I don't really understand how it's supposed to work. They say, in the first film, they say it's at the centre of the earth. I thought, how can that work? That doesn't make a huge amount of sense, but they kind of changed that for the others. It's just deep underground, isn't it, in the end? But there is like a fan edit out there called The Matrix Dezionized, and it's basically reloaded and revolutions, re-edited, and all the Zion parts taken out. And it's it works a lot better because it's just aboard the what they call them. They're not submarines, are they? They're like hovercraft or whatever they call them. The ships, just aboard the ships essentially. And in the Matrix, we don't bother with Zion. They talk about it, but don't bother with it. And it works a lot better. Right, next up, 13, The Dollars Trilogy. I'm not a fan of spaghetti westerns, to be completely honest. I like westerns, but I'm not a fan of spaghetti westerns. The lip syncing puts me off. The Dollars Trilogy, sometimes also called the Man with No Name Trilogy, is a loose combination of films. This is it. Is it a trilogy? Because Clint Eastwood playing a different character in them. I don't know. As I said, I'm not a fan, so I don't really know a huge amount about them. All directed by Italian filmmaker Sergio Leone, all starring spaghetti westerns, they're called, weren't they? All starring Clint Eastwood and all scored by Ennio Morricone. Wah, wah, wah. Everybody knows it. Even if you're not a fan, you know it, don't you? A Fistful of Dollars, 64. For a Few Dollars More, 65. And The Good, The Bad and The Ugly, 66. So they rattled them out, didn't they, in a 3-year thing. Imagine that these days. A film a year. Doesn't happen very often, does it? Unless the film back to back, and it's just editing and all that. Anyway, perfected the spaghetti western. No characters or plot lines carry over between the three movies. I think one of them filmed in Spain, though. I think they might have been filmed in Spain. But anyway, Eastwood's protagonist gets called different names in the movies, going by Joe, Manco and Blondie. And yet the three films feel very much of a piece. All three revise the myth of American exceptionalism offered by classic westerns. In its place, Leone presents the American West as at once beautiful and savage, a gorgeous Spanish landscape. See, I do know some things in which desperate men scratch out a precarious living. They replace the simple dichotomy between handsome white hats and scruffy black hats with barbarians in 10-gallon hats, perfecting the revisionist westerns of its era. But as I said, I'm not really a fan of the Dollars Trilogy. I like westerns. The Searchers, I think, is one of the greatest films ever made. Dancer with Wolves, again, deserved all the awards and Oscars and stuff it earned. But the spaghetti ones, I'm not a fan of. But I don't hate them either. But I'm just not a fan. Right, moving on. Number 12, the Jason Bourne trilogy. Yes, I like all these as well, and the other ones. I liked Bourne Legacy as well. I thought that was a good film. I liked the other one because it carried on after the trilogy, didn't it? Anyway, like The Matrix before it, the three original Bourne movies... Oh, by the way, speaking about The Matrix, we never mentioned Matrix Resurrections, did we, the film that came afterwards? Bloody awful, isn't it? Like The Matrix before it, the three original Bourne movies must bear the sins of the movies that ripped it off. When Paul Greengrass took over from the Bourne Identity 2002 director Doug Liman, he brought a kinetic shaky cam style to the Bourne Supremacy 2004 and the Bourne Ultimatum 2007. For years afterward, lesser directors confounded illegible chaos for immediacy. Essentially, it inspired, I suppose, the Bond movies of Daniel Craig. A lot of people are saying the Daniel Craig era was the Bourne Bond movies. It could be argued. But when rewatching those later two films, the pretenders only underscore the power of Greengrass's approach, which stripped away the slick veneer of most spy thrillers and replaced it with an unmistakable brutality. More than a stylistic exercise, Greengrass's visual approach continues the unique take on espionage that Lyman began when he and writers Tony Gilroy and William Blake Herron adapted the Robert Ludlum novel The Bourne Identity. A veteran of 90s indies and Hollywood dramas, Matt Damon, made for an unlikely super spy, but his aw-shucks demeanour and a sharp conspiracy script reinvented the genre for the post-9/11 world. When Greengrass took over and dialed up the action, Bourne became something that audiences had never seen before and couldn't wait to see again, even if it came in the countless knockoff films of the 2000s, which kind of includes the Daniel Craig Bond films. But yeah, I love the Bourne films. I think they're great. Gets a bit confusing sometimes with the timelines and stuff because it kind of interweaves and goes backwards and forwards a little bit, but they're still great. And I would love to see what happened with the Bourne Legacy characters in the future. It never mentions them again, I don't think, but I would like to see what happened to those. Right, next up, number 11, the Evil Dead trilogy. Some might call foul here, not because the 3 Evil Dead movies directed by Sam Raimi are bad. Well, they're not, though. No one who loves cinema can complain about Raimi's wildly... I struggle with that word, wildly... It's a hard word to say. Inventive approach to low-budget horror. Rather, they may insist that the 3 main movies aren't really a trilogy because Evil Dead 2 kind of remakes Evil Dead, which it sort of does. True, Raimi and his co-writer Scott Spiegel devote the first third of 1987's Evil Dead 2 repeating the basic plot of the previous film, taking full advantage of the budget that they didn't have back in 1981. But anyone going to Evil Dead for the plot has made a huge mistake. The appeal of the Raimi Evil Dead films comes not from how Bruce Campbell's Ash Williams releases and then battles the demonic Deadites. Instead, it's the slapstick gags that Raimi invents to torture his childhood friend and star. Furthermore, the 3 Evil Dead movies have distinct tones, with the original going for intense horror, which we mentioned in another video. The second adding the Three Stooges style comedy, and the final entry, Army of Darkness, bringing slapstick to a Ray Harryhausen inspired medieval adventure. Yeah, that's it. Evil Dead 2 is just a remake of Evil Dead. It's just what it couldn't do. Like I said, they gave him more money, didn't they? And essentially, they had to remake Evil Dead because they couldn't use any footage from Evil Dead because it was a different production company that made it. They didn't have the rights to the footage from the first film, so they just remade it, essentially. And Army of Darkness, again, hot take, I'm not a huge fan of Army of Darkness. I admire it and appreciate it. I like the stop motion work and stuff with all the skeletons and demons and stuff. But I'm not a fan. It's not a film I rewatch over and over again. Sorry. Right, moving on. Number 10, the Mad Max trilogy. Worst thing about the first 3 Mad Max movies is the first one, which I didn't like. I didn't like Mad Max. But Mad Max 2 is up there, one of the great films of its time. Besides their hateful star... Oh, piss off. Piss off. Unbelievable. The one drawback to the originals is director George Miller, hateful star, that Robert Downey Jr. has just publicly, gone on film saying he should be given another chance. Like they did with Robert Downey Jr. He got another chance, didn't he? Joe George, you're an idiot. That's the author of this piece. The one drawback to the originals is director George Miller perfected his formula in the 2015 semi-reboot Mad Max Fury Road, which took advantage of the budget and effects unavailable when he made the original trilogy in the 1970s and 80s. Yeah, but they did a pretty good job in Mad Max 2 and Mad Max 3. Well, they did a pretty good job in the original Mad Max, even though they had no money. But, some great stunts in that. Anyway. However, those impressive visuals shouldn't distract from the achievement of the first films. Because even though in Fury Road, they did have actual cars and trucks and stuff doing stunts, there were a lot of CG enhancements and all that in it to hide things or to add things. But it's still a great film, is Fury Road. It moves along at a clip and, never mind that Max is a secondary character in it, but never mind. Right, inspired by the automobile injuries he saw while working as a physician, Miller debuted Mad Max in 1979, one of many low-budget grindhouse movies produced in Australia at the time. Set just before the collapse of society, a lot of people forget that the first Mad Max is essentially just set in a normal world where you have TVs and stuff and all that with the news on suggesting that something's going on, in the political climate of the world. But it's just a normal world, more or less. Anyway, Mad Max starred an electric Mel Gibson as policeman Max Rokotansky. Why did they pick that name? No idea. It's like from a video game, isn't it? Anyway, who goes on a mission of vengeance against a hateful motorcycle gang because his family get, taken out by them. And the guy who played the leader of the motorcycle gang in the first film comes back as I forgot his name now, the main baddie in Fury Road, Immortan Joe. Anyway, the 1981 sequel, Mad Max 2, or The Road Warrior in the States, amps up the material. I think they called it The Road Warrior in America because I think it came out before Mad Max had been released in the United States. So they couldn't call it Mad Max 2 because there hadn't been a Mad Max 1. So they just called it The Road Warrior. Anyway, amps up the material with a post-apocalyptic story that pits Max against the Ayatollah of rock and roller. Why did I say that? Rock and roller. Lord Humongous, Kjell Nielsen, who's this big buff fella in a Jason Voorhees hockey mask. Anyway, the gauzy third end, and it's got some of the best stunts and stuff like that and action ever put on film. It is an astonishing film. It is really good. Is Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. The gauzy third entry, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome 1985, may have courted mainstream success with a family-friendly kid plot, but Miller's skill as a director remained. It was actually... there were two directors for it. I think Miller directed the main part of the film with the action stuff with Tina Turner's I forgot what they call it now, where the Thunderdome is, but there were another plot with like these kids who were looking for a pilot or something, or the captain or whatever they called them, from like an old plane crash or something like that, and they wanted Max to look after them or whatever. I can't really remember. It's a while since I've watched Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It's good, but not as good as... Mad Max 2 stands head and shoulders above both of the other entries in that original trilogy. Right, moving on. The Dark Knight trilogy. Again, hot take. I'm not a huge fan of the Dark Knight trilogy. They're all right. I don't mind them, but I don't go back to them very often. Anyway, like I go back to, especially Batman Returns. I watch Batman Returns and Batman Forever quite a bit, to be completely honest. I do like those two films. I know Batman Forever is not Tim Burton. I know it's Joel Schumacher, but those two films I really like. Anyway, in these days of waning superhero supremacy, it might be easy to forget the power of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. But back when Batman Begins released in 2005, a grounded and serious superhero blockbuster felt revolutionary, especially when Nolan drew from Michael Mann's classic Heat to make The Dark Knight in 2008. Not even the misjudged The Dark Knight Rises, with its increasingly mouldy pro-cop take, can diminish the power of those first films. As I said, I'm not a huge fan, and I don't like his voice when he's Batman. You can't tell what he's saying. Christian Bale. I know he's supposed to be like disguising his voice, but why? Didn't have to disguise his voice. Anyway, part of the enduring quality of the Dark Knight trilogy stems from its performances. Even after so many imitators, Heath Ledger's Joker remains a force of nature that commands the screen. Anne Hathaway and Tom Hardy's takes on Catwoman and Bane get better each passing year, if you say so. And Gary Oldman, Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman, gosh, there's the size of a tangerine. And Morgan Freeman have become the definitive versions of Commissioner Gordon, Alfred, and Lucius Fox. And now that we're all done giggling about his growl, because he sounds ridiculous, we can see again the humanity underpinning Christian Bale's Batman, a man who adopts the Dark Knight identity as a necessity and who longs to become Bruce Wayne once more. As I said, I'm not a fan, to be completely honest. But they're all right. If you like them, great. But they're not for me. Number 8, Back to the Future trilogy. Now, yes, I think this would be higher for me. This would be higher in the list, not at number 8. But anyway, not to get all when I was your age, but kids today don't understand. How old Joe George, I wonder? But he's not my age. But kids today don't understand what it was like to watch the first Back to the Future 1985 on home video, finish a rollicking adventure, and then seeing the words "to be continued." Part of the excitement stemmed from the structural perfection that preceded it. Director Robert Zemeckis and co-writer Bob Gale crafted an airtight script that hits every beat with precision but never feels stultified. Anchored by Michael J. Fox's would-be cool kid Marty McFly and Christopher Lloyd's manic Doc Brown, Back to the Future toes the line between celebration of boomer nostalgia and savage critique of the good old days. Back to the Future is a perfect film. It's up there with Ghostbusters as a perfect film. It's amazing. At the time, audiences rejected Back to the Future Part 2, 1989, for slipping too far into the latter with its mean-spirited dystopia created by bully Biff Tannen. Well, that was the point of it. It's supposed to be mean-spirited. Thomas Wilson. However, the past few decades have only proven Zemeckis and Gale correct, with Back to the Future 2 transforming into a somehow prescient critique of the Trump administration. After the fact, I suppose you could say. Furthermore, where most sequels copy the plot and beats of the original film, Back to the Future revisits the first film as part of its plot. Back to the Future 2 revisits the first film as part of its plot. A clever inversion of most sequels' shameless regurgitations, but without... I forgot his name. He played Marty McFly's dad. I forgot the actor's name, I'm sorry. Because he wouldn't return for whatever reason. And to top it all off is a solid no-frills western, Back to the Future Part 3. Something that everyone, boomers, 80s kids or otherwise, can enjoy. Back to the Future Part 3, it's in my opinion, it's the least of the trilogy. But, it's fine. But the first film is an astonishing movie. The second film is fun, and it's nice that they go back. We see things from see things from the first film from a different perspective. So that makes it fun. And the third film is just its own thing, really. Let's say set in the Wild West. But, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. But the first film is great. Right, the Three Colours trilogy. I have no idea what this is. Genuinely, I have no idea what this is. Right, Before and Apu fans are in shambles when they realise that Polish director Krzysztof Kieslowski, I've no idea, has claimed the one artsy-fartsy slot on this list. While both of these esteemed trilogies have their merits, Three Colours wins out not just because of its top-level filmmaking, but because of their position in film history. Never heard of it. The indie movie boom of the 1990s invited audiences to pay attention to foreign cinema, making new fans of Kieslowski, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, who had been working since the 60s. Its combination of European allure and thematic coherence made the Three Colours trilogy a prime candidate for crossover appeal. Never heard of it. I bet in this list, they're not including the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy, the original one. Maybe because that were a made-for-TV thing, wasn't it? But they were released as movies, weren't they? Well, I've got the blue DVDs anyway, 3 films, which are really good English dubs, by the way. You can hardly tell, with the mouth stuff. But anyway, I bet that's not in this list. But we will see. Maybe they are. Don't know. However, because I've not looked. However, lest we treat the film's success as a result of good timing and manoeuvring by the bad men at Miramax, The Trilogies' American distributor, it's important to remember that all three films are moving masterpieces, working with co-writer Krzysztof Pichowicz, again, apologise, Kieslowski, or Kieslowski, I don't know, crafts a trio of movies named after one of the colours in the French flag. Each entry has its own tone, with the ineffable sorrow of Three Colours Blue, 1993, the hapless comedy of Three Colours White, 1994, and the passion of Three Colours Red, also 1994. Together the movies explore the depth of human existence in all its pain and beauty. Never heard of it. Never heard of them. But there's a trailer there for you to look at. Right, next up, number 6. Again, this would have been higher in my list. The Indiana Jones trilogy. I bet they don't even have the Poltergeist trilogy in this list. I bet they don't. Anyway, because we're getting to the sharp end of the list now, aren't we? Let me have a drink. Right, forget the depressing final movies, The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and The Dial of Density. Yes, I mispronounced that deliberately. The first 3 Indiana Jones movies were 80s blockbuster perfection, driven by a love shared by Steven Spielberg and George Lucas of adventure serials from the 1930s through the 50s, and by Eon Productions' refusal to let Spielberg make a James Bond movie. Raiders of the Lost Ark and its sequels, to be honest, Spielberg were probably out of their price league. They like to keep things essentially in-house at Eon. But anyway, Raiders of the Lost Ark and its sequels, The Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade, transcend nostalgia with the most handsome man of all time, Joe, behave, Harrison Ford, in the lead. The Indiana Jones trilogy has it was intended to... Do you mean as it was intended to be for nearly 20 years? Brought classic Golden Age Hollywood storytelling into the age of modern special effects. Proofreading, thing of the past. That mixture of the old and the new makes the trio feel timeless, which helps smooth over the embarrassing edges of Temple of Doom. A lot of people don't like Temple of Doom because it is kind of... what's the word? What did they use in Back to the Future? What phrase? I forgot what phrase they used. Hang on, let me check. Where are we? Mean-spirited. That's it. Mean-spirited. The Temple of Doom was kind of mean-spirited in some ways. But anyway. It always feels good to watch indie punch Nazis, and the 3 movies contain some of Spielberg's best camera work. Less a copy of the low-budget, lowbrow films that inspired them, the first 3 Indiana Jones movies elevate the material into pure entertainment cinema. The first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of the greatest films ever made, top 5 easily. Temple of Doom, it's fine, I enjoy it. Last Crusade, not quite as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it's not far behind. And it's a great, wrap up to that trilogy, because they ride off into the sunset at the end. And, so it's a lovely film. And I went to see it at the cinema 3 times, which is a lot for me back then. Anyway, so, yeah. But this would have been higher up. It wouldn't have been at number 6, it would have been higher up for me. Sam Raimi's, number 5, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. I'd have included this, but I don't think it'd have been quite as high as this. But I do like them. I really like the Spider-Man trilogy, because I like Spider-Man 3. Yep, Sam Raimi appears again. Don't forget, we've had the Evil Dead trilogy. Yep, Sam Raimi has made 2 of the best trilogies of all time. And yes, I realise that Spider-Man 3 exists. Pardon me. I really like Spider-Man 3, and I don't know why people don't like it. It's not as good as the first 2, but, there's nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. It's a bit cluttered. That's the only thing you could argue about. It's a bit cluttered. Anyway, with the exception of maybe James Gunn, no filmmaker has been better suited to making superhero movies, as the genre serves Raimi's Midwestern sincerity and his smash-bang visual sensibilities. Where too many fans think about fidelity to the source material in terms of casting and plot points, Raimi knows that it's really about tone. His movies embrace the soap opera and action of the Jerry Conway and John Romita Sr. comics that he loved best, making Spider-Man 2002 and especially Spider-Man 2 2004 living comics. Sorry, when you say living comics, I immediately think of Ang Lee's Hulk. That is actually just a comic on the movie screen, but anyway. For that reason, it's impossible to see anyone but Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst as the leads of Raimi's movies. His Spidey is not the angsty quipster that many readers prefer, nor is his MJ the assured supermodel of 90s comics. Instead, they are regular people who indulge in their melodramatic emotions. Regular people, except for MJ is like a Broadway actress and he's a superhero, but never mind. It's that personal approach that allows Raimi, she's a Broadway actress who's going to marry an astronaut. Regular people. It's that personal approach that allows Raimi to make blockbuster superhero movies that feel deeply personal, resulting in sequences that redeem even clunky films such as the Sandman transformation scene in Spider-Man 3, which is beautifully done, the Sandman. When you first see him as the Sandman and he's trying to form himself in the sand, it's quite beautifully done. It's really moving in places. Right, next up, number 4, the Toy Story trilogy. The Toy Story, yes, I agree. This is, I'm just saying because I'm thinking what's to come. Probably wouldn't be in my top 3. I'm wondering what's going to be. I don't know. The Toy Story trilogy has no bad entries. The great films. The Toy Story. Toy Story 4 wasn't a great film. It was an unnecessary film, and they're doing another. Anyway, sure, there's a certain choppiness to the first film, and the third movie doesn't always know what to do with Buzz Lightyear, but all 3 feature impeccable animation for the time, inspired gags, and emotionally rich stories, where so many of its competitors have aged into ugly artifacts of the early CG era. Toy Story 1995 and its sequels have a humanity that is not defined by its technical achievements or limitations, which is true. The original Toy Story from 1995, it does look dated now. The CG looks dated, but because the story's so good and the characters are so, likeable, you kind of, you cut it some slack. So it's still a great film. It's still, it's a special super film. And Toy Story 2 even more so. Anyway, much of the movie's success owes to their central conceit in which a boy's toys gain sentience and have react to his maturity. What the hell's that supposed to mean? Bloody hell, proofread, you flaming articles. Gain sentience and have react to his maturity. I've no idea what he's trying to say there. Don't know. With every year, the cowboy Woody, Tom Hanks, and even spaceman Buzz, Tim Allen, the old meme that Andy's mother also has toys called Woody and Buzz. Sorry. Feel less like something a kid would play with, and yet the performers and animators make them feel timeless, believable stand-ins for the passage of time. This approach lends the film an emotional punch, resulting in standout sequences such as When She Loved Me. If you had a dry eye after that song in Toy Story 2, anyway, or the incinerator scene in Toy Story 3. Again, at the end of Toy Story 3, if you've got a dry eye after he gives the toys and stuff to, I forgot her name, the little girl, you're not human. But the Toy Story trilogy is a great trilogy, and whatever. Number 3. Oh yes, forgot about these. This would have been my number 1. It would have been my number 1. The Lord of the Rings trilogy. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, it is the greatest trilogy ever put onto film. It should have been number one. I'm guessing what he's going to put at number one, because it was mentioned up at the top. So we'll see. Anyway, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it's not Star Wars. I'm guessing number two is Star Wars, the original the original trilogy, and I'm guessing number one is going to be The Godfather. And I'm going to have another hot take. But anyway, the Lord of the Rings trilogy deserves all the praise heaped upon it, if only for the way that Peter Jackson and his co-writers Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens transformed J.R.R. Tolkien's influential but dusty books into gripping adventure stories with mass appeal. Yes, they did. I've got the books, never read them, tried to read them. I know I've said this a lot, but I just can't get through them. Tolkien's prose, it's hard work. It is hard work. And if a book's hard work to read, why bother? But anyway, before the 2000s, concepts like Middle-earth and the One Ring were the domain of nerds, Led Zeppelin fans, and people who have read Plato's Republic. But after Fellowship of the Ring hit theatres in 2001, everyone and their grandmother had opinions about the omission of Tom Bombadil. Don't worry, he's coming back in Rings of Power. Not coming back, he's coming in, he's appearing in Rings of Power. Anyway, it's easy to see why the trio won over the masses. Jackson and his cinematographer Andrew Lesnie transformed New Zealand into a truly fantastical world with sweeping cameras and conversations in candlelit taverns, and probably have earned New Zealand tens and tens of billions of dollars, whatever they have. It is New Zealand dollars, I think it is, isn't it? In tourism money. What were New Zealand known for before Lord of the Rings? Lamb, probably. New Zealand lamb. But now people go there. People go to New Zealand to see to see Middle Earth. That's what they do. So that's it. His influence on his own country is probably possibly the greatest that any one man or one company has had on the country, in my opinion. And they owe him a huge debt, does the government and the people of New Zealand, in my opinion. But anyway, enough of that. Moreover, the cast matched the utter lack of snark of the filmmakers, playing their parts with an earnestness that never asked the audience to smirk at the pretensions of the story. Legolas, what do your elf eyes see? They're taking the hobbits to Isengard. That combination of skill and sincerity make the Lord of the Rings trilogy an epic for everybody. Yes, it's the greatest film trilogy of all time. I watch it at least once a year. It's amazing. It is amazing. The greatest film trilogy of all time. Should be number one. Don't know why it's not number one for Joe George. Because Joe George of Den of Geeks, sorry mate, you're an idiot. But anyway. Number two, yes, the original Star Wars trilogy. So it looks like I'm going to be right about me number two and number one. No, Star Wars wasn't intended to be a trilogy, resulting in clunky bits about Obi-Wan explaining what he really meant about Darth Vader killing Anakin Skywalker and an awkward sister-kisser moment. No, it wasn't intended to be a trilogy. It was intended to be a 9-film series. That's what he intended. But anyway. No, Return of the Jedi doesn't know what to do with Han Solo. Joe, proofread your articles. Yes, the ending of The Empire Strikes Back sets a standard the third film couldn't match. All legitimate complaints, to which I offer two rejoinders. One, who cares? Two, shut up. Pretty much, yeah. But you've got to mention it, haven't you? Especially the sister kissing moment. Why make Leia or Leia Luke's sister? Don't know, but I know to give him in the throne room in Return of the Jedi, it was to give Luke that impetus, wasn't it? You know, when Vader finds out, so you have a twin sister. If you will not return, maybe she will. No, and all that. So that's what it's for, isn't it? It's kind of clunkily shoehorned in there, isn't it? Nobody's saying that George Lucas is the greatest, writer of all time. But who cares? Star Wars is the reason that genre filmmakers think in trilogies. The first film introduces a universe at once new and familiar. Empire Strikes Back, 1980, defines the dark middle chapter now taken as a generic given. And Return of the Jedi, 83, completes the story of the son's ascendancy and the father's redemption. I still can't get round that. How can Darth Vader be redeemed, Anakin, just by killing the Emperor? But that we learn he didn't do anyway. But does doing that redeem him of all the other people he's murdered or had a hand in murdering, an entire planet blown up, and many other things? The many, many bad Star Wars movies that followed do not diminish the quality of these films, nor do they accentuate any missteps. Rather, they only raise the bar, reminding generations that it's really hard to do what the original Star Wars trilogy accomplished. Yes, this would be my number 2. My number 1 would be The Lord of the Rings, and the original Star Wars trilogy would be my number 2. I think then it'd be the Indiana Jones trilogy, and then Back to the Future, probably then Toy Story. I would probably include the Star Trek 2 to 4, that trilogy, that story, the Khan arc. I'd probably include that as well up there. Anyway, so number 1, the Godfather trilogy. Hot take, I'm not a fan of the Godfather, but I'm a sci-fi nerd, so I think I've watched. I don't know that. I can't remember if I've sat and watched them all the way through. I know I've seen The Godfather Part 3 all the way through. And, whatever. I watched it and all that, okay, that happened. But I can't actually think if I've sat and watched Godfather 1 and 2 all the way through. Might have done, but I can't remember. Okay, let's get this out of the way. Yes, Godfather Part 3, 1990 is bad. I don't know if I call it bad. It was just there. It has the seed of a good idea, with Al Pacino's Michael Corleone finally facing the weight of his failure to make his family business legitimate. But as soon as Robert Duvall passed on reprising his role of Tom Hagen, leaving Michael without any of his brothers, Francis Ford Coppola, yes, that's how I pronounce it, should have admitted that the film would never work, and yet The Godfather Part 3 still has stuff to recommend, including strong performances from Pacino and Andy Garcia. Also, that Elvis Costello song rocks. I can't remember. Still, whatever shortcomings of Part 3, The Godfather trilogy features 2 5-star perfect movies. Every single performance in The Godfather 1972 works. The cinematography of Gordon Willis honours the film's noir roots while giving it a baroque feel, and Coppola transforms a pulpy gangster flick into a referendum on capitalism. And then 2 years later, they do it all again with The Godfather Part 2, 1974, drilling deeper into the character development to make the story of Michael Corleone the great American tragedy. I'm going to have to watch them, aren't I? I'm going to have to force myself to sit down and watch The Godfather trilogy. Anyway, Part 3 could have been 3 hours of Diane Keaton yelling about abortions, and this would still be one of the greatest trilogies of all time. As I said, it wouldn't even be close in my list of top trilogies. I'm gonna have to sit down and reappraise them. So there we go. Like I say, my number 1 would be Lord of the Rings. My number 2 would be Star Wars. My number 3 would be, I forgot what I said. Back to the Indiana Jones. Then it'd be Back to the Future. Then Toy Story probably. Spider-Man would be way down the list. Even though I do like the films, Evil Dead wouldn't even be there. I like them, but they're not up there in my opinion. Same with the Bourne trilogy. I do like those. I never heard of Three Colours. The Bourne trilogy, even though I like those films, they wouldn't figure in a maybe not in the top 10. I don't know. I'm trying to think. And the Dark Knight trilogy wouldn't be in there. Mad Max, that'd probably feature in the top 10, but it'd be way down the list. I said Evil Dead wouldn't figure. Jason Bourne wouldn't figure. The Dollars trilogy wouldn't figure. The Matrix would be up there. That'd be in my top 10. But Naked Gun wouldn't be in there either, because I don't think of it as a trilogy. They're just 3 films. They don't really follow on from one another. They're just 3 separate adventures, really, but just with the same characters in. But I suppose the same could be said for Indiana Jones and all those. I suppose. But anyway, so there we go. That's the list. That's Joe George's list. And I don't agree with you, George. But some of I agree with some of the inclusions, but not in that order. Not in that order. So, right. So there we go. That's it. That's the Joe George's best movie trilogies. And at number 1, he had The Godfather, which I wouldn't. I wouldn't have The Godfather in at number 1. I'd have Lord of the Rings at number 1, Star Wars at 2, Indiana Jones at 3. That would be my top 3. So there we go. Right. All done. All done and dusted. Right. So we'll leave it there. So, thanks for watching. Wherever you are, look after each other. And until next time, I'll see you there.